Am I the a-hole for yelling at my son's teacher and making her cry? Last Thursday, I, 36M, got a call from my son's school telling me I needed to come and collect him because he had passed out during class. My son has passed out a good few times before, so we've made sure he knows what to do when he starts to feel faint, to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. However, when I arrived at the school, my son was holding an ice pack to his head. When I asked about it, the nurse told me he had hit his head when he fell. I wondered why he hadn't laid down like we taught him to do. I brushed it off and decided to ask him about it later, as he was still kind of out of it. The next day, I asked him about it, and what he told me made my blood boil. Apparently, when my son had first started to feel like he was going to pass out, he tried to tell his teacher. When he stood up to talk to her, he was immediately yelled at to sit back down. The next time he tried to tell her, she told him that he didn't look sick, so he wasn't allowed to go to the nurse's office. Then, his class was doing an activity that required standing for practically the rest of the lesson. Before the activity started, my son yet again told this teacher that he felt like he was going to pass out and asked if he could sit the activity out. The teacher responded by yelling at him, claiming he was just being lazy and was making excuses. My son's friend was getting worried about him, so he told the teacher, who then started yelling at his friend, accusing them both of trying to get out of lesson. Not even a minute later, my son passed out, and according to his friend and a couple other classmates, she acted very shocked, as if she hadn't been ignoring him trying to tell her how he felt for the last 5 minutes. I'm extremely worried about the impact this will have on my son, as when the fainting first started, he didn't tell any of his teachers as he was scared that they were going to yell at him. This resulted in quite a few injuries from falling. It has taken a while for him to start telling them when he's feeling faint, and I'm afraid this incident will cause him to stop asking and he will hurt himself. I had wanted to go down to the school that day, but my son had stayed off and my wife wasn't home from work yet. The following Monday, I arranged an appointment with the principal. After I explained what had happened, he called in my son's teacher, who then tried to deny the fact that he ever told her anything and he had just randomly collapsed. This is where I may be the a-hole. By this point I was pissed. I began to scream at her, yelling about how my son could have gotten hurt. I was so pissed I hadn't even noticed that she'd started to cry. By that point I was asked to leave by the principal. My wife and some of my friends think I'm in the right, but my parents and the other half of my friends think I went too far. I don't know about this one. What do you guys think? Am I the a-hole? Edit, I'm just gonna answer some frequently asked questions, that the answers weren't included in the original post. 1. We are not in the US, so a 504 plan is not in place, however, we do have something similar. 2. My son is in the middle of getting a diagnosis. Doctors say the most likely option is POTS. 3. My son is 13, and I would say he's a fairly well-behaved kid, only sometimes getting in trouble for stupid things that 13-year-old boys do. He usually stops after he gets a verbal warning. We've never had any major issues with his behavior. 4. Yes, the teacher was aware of his episodes. Update. The new school year starts tomorrow, and we've just been notified that this teacher will not be returning for the new school year. The email we received claimed she has decided to move on to new opportunities. However, me and my wife have had a talk with some other parents, and unsurprisingly, that is not the case. Apparently, my son was not the first or last student she has done this to. This teacher is notorious for never letting anyone leave her classroom for anything, unless she can physically see something wrong with them. Even then, there have been a few instances when she's told students having things like eczema flare-ups to wait until the end of class. She even tried to do the same thing to my son when he was having another episode. Luckily, since the last incident, he's learned to ignore her, and he and his friend went down to the nurse despite what she said. At the beginning of summer, my wife got a call from one of the other mothers, who explained that the teacher had tried to do the same thing to her daughter. As it turns out, she had a friend on the school board and is very well liked by all parents and staff. She arranged a meeting with the teacher, the principal, the school board and the superintendent to discuss this teacher's behavior. Before the meeting, she spent ages compiling evidence against this teacher. She managed to get the medical forms of the students she'd denied access to the nurse to, with permission from the parents of course. She somehow got all the reports of her behavior towards students. She got statements from students, parents, and other members of staff. She even got a couple students who had more serious incidents to come to the meeting with their parents and recount what had happened. We couldn't be there since we were going on vacation, but both my son and his friend filmed them telling what happened and we gave it to the mother to play at the meeting. When it finally came time for the meeting, the teacher had not anticipated that the mother would be so prepared, and after an hour in the meeting, the teacher was finally fired after 6 years of mistreating students. If you're wondering how she kept her job so long, I was too. Turns out she was a nepo hire. The principal is her uncle. For all those wondering how my son is doing, he's doing a bit better, though his episodes have been happening more frequently as of late. Thank you all for the advice and well wishes on the original post. Salt does seem to help sometimes. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to share your story in the next video, comment on this one and I'll make it happen.